Galled threads, stripped threads, cross threads. I'm fixing a threaded bolt hole. Hola! I'm Mike, the backyard mechanic, and this is the Mustang. I'm putting headers on it. I'm doing that because the exhaust manifold has to come off to replace the sensor. Two birds. While doing the job, I took the starter off, and to my absolute horror, the bolts wouldn't go back in. Although I ultimately fixed the problem, I'm lucky I didn't have it more often. The Mustang has an aluminum block. We're not screwing steel to cast iron like the old days. When working on modern cars, galvanic corrosion is something to be aware of. This is essentially how different types of metals negatively interact. Low carbon steel interacting with aluminum could cause the aluminum to corrode. This is sorted out by the manufacturer with high carbon grade 8 bolts, but don't willy-nilly go replacing them with cheap steel and screw them into an aluminum block. Make sure to get an OEM bolt, like this starter bolt, for the low price of $71.10. Act now while you can save $10. Oh, and if I get 2 bolts, I can save 20% on shipping. But seriously, you can buy starter bolts for a couple bucks. Are they actually selling these things? Who's buying them? The government? Are these for the F-35? Does the F-35 use the same starter as my Mustang? As mentioned, the bolts used in the aluminum blocks are grade 8 bolts, which are high carbon and hardened. This combination has minimal galvanic corrosion and was not my issue. Another thing to watch for with aluminum is cross-threading, due to the soft material. Always start bolts by hand so you can feel a resistance in the threads. But that wasn't my problem either. What I did wrong was I used power tools. The power ratchet I used generated heat caused by friction and galled the threads. Galling happens when friction caused bolt threads to seize to the threads of the hole. It is also known as cold welding. Worst case scenario is the bolt literally welds in place and you have to drill it out. Fortunately, this was not my problem, but I did apparently rip out and bind some of the aluminum threads. Bad threads is usually a semi-emergency, such as mine was. I couldn't put the car back together until I fixed the threads. So how to fix it? I went to Lowe's and bought this tap and this tap handle for 15 bucks. A thread tap is a tool that cuts and restores internal threads and drilled holes in metal parts. Relatedly, a thread die is a tool that cuts and restores the threads to a bolt or the male part of a fastener. If this happens again in the future with a different size, I have the handle now, so I just have to buy a new tap for 8 bucks. Unless you're a professional, I recommend you do the same. An entire tap and die kit will cost $100 or more, and this is an unnecessary purchase. You'll rarely, if ever, need to use a die. If a bolt gets messed up, you can replace the bolt, but, I couldn't just replace the engine block. You could spend 50 bucks on a set of taps, only to find you ever need to use 1 or 2 sizes. This is one of those things you can't cheap out on. Amazon has 40-piece tap and die sets, like this Amph-Ray Ray for 22 bucks, or this F-Ice Ray for 25. Hell, this Gooch 66 tap set is $1.75. Ironically, I was going to name my son Gooch 66. Some of the problems you can have with these cheap sets is that the handles don't hold the taps are not straight, the thread cutters are not ground well, or they can just plain be the wrong size. If the size is not accurate, you will find that it's either not cutting enough or it's cutting too much, leaving you with sloppy threads.
Giggity.
But worst of all, they could be made of cheap steel or improperly hardened and break. Now, a broken tap isn't necessarily something to fear. They usually break above the hole, giving you something to grab onto with vice grips. If it breaks off in the hole, they sell tap extractor sets. When buying taps, get something of reasonable quality with a name brand, like DeWalt, Craftsman, Gear Wrench, or Cobalt. First thing to know on tapping is you need a lubricant, so the teeth will cut the metal without binding. It should be very light. Something like engine oil would not penetrate well and would also glob up with metal shavings. Common lube for this is Tap Magic, but you know what else works just as well? WD-40, and you probably have one of these in the garage. And if you're like me, you don't remember where it even came from. To clean out the threads, start the tap slowly and carefully and straight so as not to damage the beginning of the thread. Once started, go ahead and screw it in until you hit the trouble area. Now you have to apply pressure. It's very important to apply the pressure evenly on both sides of the handle so you don't break the tap. This handle slides to the side for more leverage, but know that this is getting advanced. If not careful, you'd be applying twice as much pressure to one side as the other, risking breakage. I had to do this as the job got difficult. It helps that the tap is buried in the hole, which keeps it straight. I also did my best that while I was pulling on the long side of the handle, I was pushing on the short side with my thumb. And it's a good idea to back out every turn or so and blow the chips off, put more lube on the tap. The hole I'm retapping goes straight through, so it's pretty easy to know when I'm done. If the hole is blind, you need to feel when the tap is bottomed out. When you're finished, blow out the chips and the oil. That's a way to fix the threads if they can be salvaged. But if the threads are stripped, that won't work. Also, if it's a structural part, the thread should be more securely fixed. A very secure way to repair threads is with Heli-Coils, which are spring steel thread replacements. This kit is helpful to understand the process. First, drill out an oversized hole, then use the oversized tap. Use the mandrel to screw in the Heli-Coil, then the final tool breaks off the tang. While this is secure, the method has to be accurate. This is not the easiest thing to do with hand tools. And so you don't have to leave a comment, time certs are a popular choice and are similar to Heli-Coils. They have a stronger hold, but damn are they expensive. Consider these for things like head bolts. The third way to fix bad threads is to drill out the hole for the next size tap and get a bigger bolt.
You're going to need a bigger bolt.
This saves a step from the Heli-Coils, not to mention all the tools. This will only work in circumstances where a bigger bolt fits, of course. The last idea to fix bad threads is to drill out the hole, get a longer bolt, and put a nut on the other end. Again, this will only work in certain circumstances. Turns out, if necessary, this would have worked with my starter as the holes go through and there is room to access the other side. This last one is a bit of a cheat in order to get my list to an odd amount of items for the Jibber Jabber Tube algorithm. To prevent this problem in the future, I'm using anti-seize on the starter bolts. I have 3 kinds. I bought this Loctite copper a while back, and I use it on brake parts and miscellaneous items. However, in spite of what it says on the label, that this can be used with aluminum parts, copper induces galvanic corrosion on aluminum. Maybe to prevent it, Loctite has some secret formula, but if they do, it's a secret. For this job, I got Loctite aluminum anti-seize. I was lucky to find this at Home Depot. In the future, I'll be using ceramic-based anti-seize. Since it's metal-free, galvanic corrosion is no problem. It offers the highest temperature resistance and should be virtually chemically inert.
Duh. Winning.
A word of caution when using any of these. Wear gloves or wash your hands often. It's not good for you to absorb heavy metals. When doing a major mod to your car, it's a good idea to allow extra time for events such as this. It took a few hours to clean out all 3 holes. It took an hour to find the right tap at Lowe's. Then an hour at the beginning for figuring out the problem. All in all, this cost me an extra day doing the headers on the Mustang. Time I didn't have, because the countdown is ticking to inspection day. Oh, I have a fan online. Hey fan, did you enjoy the video?
Nah, I tapped out. I think the last thing I heard was hola.
Thanks, fan. And that wasn't the only thing that went wrong. One of the exhaust manifold studs broke on me. I'll talk about that next